What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Chokehold Hour. As always, it's your boy, your host, Nate, back at it again with another week of predictions for you guys. And this weekend, we have an absolutely stacked pay-per-view with Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje headlining the event. Now, before we get into this, I just want to highlight last weekend's fight night where heavyweight Brit Tom Aspinall shined, absolutely running through Marcin Tybura in the first round by knockout. That bodes very interestingly for the heavyweight division. You have Jon Jones, who is fighting Stipe Miocic in MSG in New York for the heavyweight belt. Now the question is Jon going to stick around long enough to see a number one contender fight between guys like Sergey and Tom and then fight the winner of that? I think he possibly could retire on the mic after beating Stipe, which is going to happen, obviously, because Jon is the GOAT at MSG. That is going to be a very interesting fight, though. The heavyweight division has a lot of players right now, and I'm super excited to see how that turns out. Now, back to the task at hand. As I said, we're going to be doing our predictions for UFC 291. We're going to start in the prelims with the heavyweight banger between Derrick Lewis and Marcus Rogério de Lima, and then we're going to make our way to the main card, bottom to top, going over all the fights, and I'm going to give you guys all my picks. Now, I am beyond psyched for 291, and I do want to say, while the BMF belt is on the line in that main event, I do think this is the greatest card in UFC history without a title fight. I mean, the amount of high-level names on this fight card, you got to look at the main card. You got Tony Ferguson, you got Wonderboy, you got Dustin, you got Justin. I mean, it's ridiculous. You have so many high-profile stars on this card. Even on the prelims, Derrick Lewis is a huge draw with his ability to knock guys out. So I am super excited for this card. And that being said, we're going to jump right into it, make our way to somehow not the featured prelim. I really think the UFC fouled up with this one. I'm not sure why Gabriel Bonfim is fighting Trevin Giles in the featured prelim. I don't think that fight holds much substance. It could be entertaining because styles make fights, but you have two big, bad heavyweights with bad intentions. I think Marcos and Derrick should be the featured prelim. But that being said, let's get to it. I think that Derrick Lewis can catch Marcos Rogério de Lima early on in this fight. Let's look at the tail of the tape. Derrick Lewis has a 1-inch reach advantage. He stands at 6 feet 2 inches tall, whereas Marcos is at 6'1". But he also has a 4-inch reach advantage. He extends his arms and they go out 79 inches both ways. And Marcos only has a 75-inch reach. That's 4 inches, like I said. I think Derrick, he has power. He loves to brawl. So I think his path to victory in this fight is catching Marcos early, using that reach and catching Marcos as he comes in, almost like Curtis Blades-esque, how Derrick caught Curtis with that uppercut as Curtis shot for the takedown and put him to sleep out bad. Because when Derrick Lewis catches you, the fight is over. There's not much you can do once that man touches your chin. That's really what he brings to the table. He's not an elite wrestler. He's not a technical. He has timing, as we saw in the Curtis Blades knockout, but he's not the most technical striker compared to a guy like Ciryl Gane. I mean, what he brings to the table is his power, is the punch he packs in his fists, and I think that could be a possible outcome of this fight. But Marcos Rogério de Lima is a grinder. He landed 4 takedowns in his most recent fight. He has a good, strong wrestling base. He's very good in the clinch, and he's good at establishing his presence, putting his weight, making his opponent carry his weight for the entirety of the fight, gassing them out. And Derrick Lewis is known for having poor cardio. He is not a guy who likes to fight into the third round, and this is only a 3-round fight, which is better for Derrick, but I think the earlier the fight ends, the better for Derrick Lewis. I think the longer this fight goes, the more Marcos Rogério de Lima is going to be able to establish and implement his game plan, which is grappling, which is wrestling. I think Derrick Lewis can catch Marcos in that first round. But once that first round is over, I do believe Marcos is winning the fight. Unless Derrick has severely hurt Marcos in that first round and that translates to the second round and Derrick is able to finish him. But I just don't see that happening. I think Derrick either catches Marcos early or Marcos implements his will, is the better man, and doesn't really actually brawl that much with Derrick. I think Marcos' best path to victory here is staying out of those close counter exchanges, staying away from the brawl, and just grinding his way to a decision win and not really striking all that much, clinching, grappling, and wrestling for the entirety of the fight. So yeah, that is my prediction for how that fight's going to go. The winner is unclear because in a heavyweight fight, especially when Derrick Lewis is one of the two men fighting, you don't know what's going to happen. Derrick Lewis was down 4-0 against Alexander Volkov. Out of nowhere, he knocked him out with about 20 seconds left in that 5th round. That was incredible. But I just don't see that happening here, guys. I think it's either Derrick early or Marcos by decision or late submission. That is my prediction for how this fight's going to go. Now we are going to move on to the main card, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I know the featured prelim, Gabriel Bonfim versus Trevin Giles, is in existence. It's a fight, but I don't know. I don't see it as much of a fight of substance. I think it could be entertaining because of the styles, but I think it's an insult to Derrick Lewis not putting him on the featured prelim. I mean, if you're going to have a guy like Derrick Lewis on the prelims at all, then he might as well be the featured prelim because he is a draw. He has fans. He's headlined pay-per-views before. So as my rebuttal, my kickback to the UFC, I'm going to jump straight to the main card from this heavyweight fight and act like it is the featured prelim because I think more people are tuning in for Derrick than this featured prelim bout. That being said, let's make our way to the main card, ladies and gentlemen. First fight on the main card, absolutely already delivering. We have Kevin Holland, who is dangerous as ever. Kevin Holland, who is coming off of a solid win knockout over Santiago Ponzinibbio, fighting against Michael Chiesa, the wrestler heavy fighter with a strong wrestling base, but he can also strike too. So this fight is very interesting. You have a guy like Michael Chiesa who likes to wrestle, as I said. He likes to shoot that double leg. He likes to control you, grind you out, and just eventually break your will in the octagon, break your spirit, and just wear you down and take you out. Now, do I think that could happen in this fight? Yes, but we have to look at these two and their fight history. Just take a deep dive into their pasts in the UFC to see how this fight is going to go. So first, let's look at Kevin Holland. He's coming off of his win against Santiago Ponzinibbio, where he showed his youth, his power, and his striking are all still factors to his game. Now, before that, he lost to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think Wonderboy is possibly still the best striker in the UFC. He's old, but in recent memory, he has only lost to grapplers like Gilbert, like Bilal Muhammad. I don't think Wonderboy is any sort of joke at this point. And I do think that Kevin Holland is a really good striker. I just don't think his striking is enough to compensate when you're fighting a guy as creative as Wonderboy. Now, let's look at his fight before that. It was Khamzat Chimaev. Guys, Khamzat Chimaev, on the flip side of Wonderboy, is the best grappler possibly in MMA. Kevin Holland does not have the striking to fight with Wonderboy on the feet, and he doesn't have the grappling nowhere near to wrestle with Khamzat Chimaev. Those were both horrible matchups for him. I don't think he ever lost his stuff necessarily. Khamzat is just too much for pretty much anybody in that welterweight division and possibly anybody in the UFC with the way his weight fluctuates. Now, looking at Kevin Holland's fight before Khamzat, this is where things get interesting. Kevin Holland beat Tim Means by Darce choke. Now, if you look at Michael Chiesa, while he does have a wrestling heavy base, he's a good grappler, his weakness is the Darce choke. Let's reach super far back into Michael Chiesa's MMA career. We have a striker in Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal caught Michael Chiesa in that Darce choke and submitted him with it. Now, fast forward a little more recently, look at Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque is a striker. I know he has a solid Darce choke. It's his go-to on the ground, but he did catch Michael Chiesa with that Darce choke. So I would not be surprised if Kevin Holland, who has a Darce win in recent memory, is able to implement that Darce and catch Michael Chiesa in that Darce on the ground or as he's shooting for a takedown. I know this could be a long shot because Michael Chiesa seems to have a fairly obvious advantage in the grappling department in this fight. I truly do believe that Kevin Holland has a solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. I believe he's a brown belt. He is good on the ground, and he's shown his capability with the Darce. He's shown that he can use that submission. It is a part of his game plan and his realm of MMA skills. Michael Chiesa has shown a vulnerability to that Darce. Now, I'm not saying this is a definite. I am saying it is a very good sleeper pick. It's a nice dark horse finish for this fight to end. Could Michael Chiesa grind out a 3-round decision victory with his wrestling? Yes. Could Kevin Holland catch Michael Chiesa on the feet, stun him, wobble him, and win by TKO? Yes. These are all possibilities. This is mixed martial arts, ladies and gentlemen, the most unpredictable sport in the world. But this Darce is just a prevalent theme in both of these men's UFC careers, and that's why I think it could play a role in their main event bout. So, I think a dark horse pick, my dark horse pick for this fight, is Kevin Holland by Darce choke. That's if I'm thinking of one specific way this fight's going to end by finish, I think that is it. That being said, it's not a bad idea to sprinkle some money on Michael Chiesa money line, see if he can implement that wrestling game plan and grind out a decision victory. But Kevin Holland has that submission, like I said, and I think he definitely has a chance to use it on Michael Chiesa, a guy who's vulnerable to it. Now, I know Michael's probably training and actively increasing his ability to get out and away from the Darce choke, but when you have a weakness in MMA, it's hard to necessarily train against it. Natural weaknesses are just something that exist for every fighter. Look at Israel Adesanya. Alex Pereira is his natural weakness. Now, he beat Alex Pereira in the 4th fight that they had. It took him 3 fights to figure it out. Michael Chiesa's only been submitted by this Darce 2 times. Maybe it'll take him 3 times to figure it out too. Totally different scenarios, but I'm just saying, anything can happen in the sport that is mixed martial arts, and that's why I think there's a strong chance that Kevin Holland gets it done by Darce. That being said, like I said, Michael Chiesa can win this fight by decision with his wrestling, but if I'm a betting man, I'm putting my money on Kevin Holland to snatch that 12th ranking from Michael Chiesa and begin his run at the middleweight 185-pound strap. Now, will he ever beat Israel Adesanya? No, I don't think that's a good fight for him at all. But who knows what the middleweight division will look like in 5 years. Kevin Holland is young. He has some wear and tear on his chin, on his career, but he has a long time left ahead of him to keep fighting, improving, and getting better, higher ranked in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So that is my dark horse pick of the night, my sleeper pick of the night, Kevin Holland by Darce choke over Michael Chiesa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the second fight on this main event, a fight between 2 absolute legends of the sport. Bobby King Green, who delivered one of the most iconic post-fight speeches after defeating Al Iaquinta. His mother died. His dad left him. He had no parents. He was raised by his grandparents, and he found that dog in him. He found a way to rise to the top and become a professional fighter at that. Of all professions, he chose professional fighter, pretty much the hardest one, and he's pretty damn good at it. He's the only fighter who can implement the Philly shell style defense properly with 4-ounce gloves. But he has a formidable man facing him in the octagon come this Saturday in Tony El Cucuy Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is dangerous. I know, he's old, he's a little worn down, he is a little washed, he's on a rough stretch of losses, but we have to look at quality of opponents. Let's ignore his last fight against Nate Diaz right now, because although Nate Diaz is not the highest level opponent, Nate Diaz is a dog. He always has a fighting chance. He wobbled the current champion, Leon Edwards, and almost knocked him out cold not so long ago, if everyone can remember that moment before Leon ascended and did one of the craziest things, if not the craziest thing this sport has ever seen, in knocking out Kamaru with that head kick. But ignoring that Nate Diaz fight, let's look at Tony Ferguson's losses. He got knocked out cold by Michael Chandler, one of the strongest, most explosive, most dynamic athletes in the sport, and one of the best lightweights in the world. Michael Chandler pushed Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, the two parts of tonight, this Saturday's main event, both to their limits. He pushed them to the brink of exhaustion. He almost broke them. He almost did it. He didn't win either of those fights, but they were fight of the night performances. Michael Chandler is very good. He was never a good matchup for Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson did not look half bad before Michael Chandler started winning that fight. Took him down, started ground and pounding him, landed that front kick. Tony Ferguson dropped Michael Chandler before all this happened, if everyone can remember, in that first round. Tony Ferguson had Michael Chandler on his back foot, retreating, scared that he would possibly get finished. Michael Chandler did end up separating Tony Ferguson far from consciousness, sending him to the shadow realm, but Tony Ferguson did not look half bad. Sometimes a knockout like that can change the course of your career, but he didn't look that shell-shocked against Nate Diaz. He just looked a little washed compared to his former self. Now, let's look at his losses before Michael Chandler. You have Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. Again, two of the top lightweights in the world right now. Both top 5 ranked guys in the UFC that could beat just about anyone in the division other than possibly Justin, Dustin, and Islam. I think you take all those 5 guys, put them in fights with each other, it's relatively close to a toss-up, like this Saturday's main event. But Tony Ferguson has been no slouch in the fights he's taken. He's taken very, very challenging opponents, challenging tasks on to himself, and he's come short. He's come up short in those tasks, in those challenges, but I think the odds makers have this one wrong. Vegas has Bobby Green as a very, very heavy favorite in this fight. I believe he's either minus 275 or minus 375, and I just don't think that's the case, frankly. If you look at Bobby Green's past couple of fights, he had that no contest against Jared Gordon. Fine, we didn't really get to see much in that fight. But before that, his last win is a decision win over Nasrat Haqparast. Now, Bobby Green, he uses that Philly shell style defense. If we look at his fight against Drew Dober, while he was fighting well in that first round, that Philly shell style defense is impenetrable, especially with 4-ounce gloves. His chin is touchable. Bobby Green is good at using the Philly shell to avoid shots, to roll with shots, shoulder roll, catch shots on his gloves, and avoid taking heavy damage. But he relies very heavily on dodging. His chin it's tucked relatively, but when he's moving, and only has one hand in the air, if you throw an overhand that gets over the shoulder or gets past his guard, it's going to catch him clean, and he might even be moving into it because of that Philly shell moving style that he has. So Bobby Green is very touchable. I don't think his defense is impenetrable in this fight. I think Tony Ferguson, who's a very creative fighter, can find a way to consistently touch Bobby Green. I think the odds should be more like plus 175 or minus 175 for Bobby Green, maybe plus like 150 or plus 200 for Tony Ferguson. But Bobby is a very heavy favorite in this fight, and I just don't think the odds makers got it right at all. I don't. I think it's going to be a much closer fight than the odds say it will be. I think that this fight is going to go the 3-round, 15-minute distance. I think it's going to go to decision, and I do think Bobby Green ultimately is going to find a way to win, and I think Tony Ferguson is going to retire after losing this fight. But I don't think it's going to be an absolutely dominant fight for either side. I think Tony Ferguson is going to scratch and claw his way through the 15-minute fight, land some shots of his own, maybe even get the nod from one of the judges. But Bobby's going to get that split decision victory or unanimous decision victory in a closely fought 3-round fight. That is how I think Bobby Green versus Tony Ferguson is going to go. But nonetheless, I'm super excited for two absolute legends of the sport to go at it, scrap, duke it out to see who is the better man. Now, we're going to move on to the third fight on this main card, and boy, does this card just continuously heats up and gets better as you move up the ladder. I know most cards are intended to do that, but this card specifically, the quality of fight just jumps leaps and bounds from each fight until you get to the co-main event. So in this fight, we have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Michel Pereira. Now, before I get into this fight, I just want to say I had the privilege of meeting Michel Pereira when I went to UFC 288 with my very close friend and manager, Zach Steklow, and we met Michel. He is very large. He is a big middleweight. He definitely will have the size and strength advantage coming into this fight against Wonderboy, but do I think that matters necessarily? No, I don't. I think Wonderboy's technical ability is going to be enough to compensate for the size mismatch that is held by him against Michel Pereira. I think Wonderboy is just too creative. He uses a wide variety of kicks to keep his opponents at bay and neutralize their striking. Michel Pereira isn't much of a grappler, and as I said early on in the podcast, Wonderboy's only losses in recent memory were to grapplers, to elite grapplers. He got wrestled, he got taken down and dominated for the entirety of his fight against Bilal Muhammad. Fine. Gilbert Burns did the same thing to him. But if you remember, Wonderboy actually dropped Gilbert Burns in the fight. And Gilbert Burns is no joke on the feet, as we saw against Kamaru Usman, as we saw in his fight against Khamzat Chimaev. Wonderboy dropped him. He just could not get past the wrestling. He does not have much of a ground game, especially when he's on the bottom. And that is his biggest flaw in mixed martial arts. It always has been and it always will be. But he still is quite possibly and arguably the best striker in mixed martial arts right now. His karate style, how light he is on his feet, his ability to avoid punches, his ability to use the kicking range to land shots and pick his opponents apart is still there, and it's undeniable. It's unparalleled, probably by anybody. I don't know. He's so unique. No one really has the style that Wonderboy has. No one implements karate like he does, other than maybe a prime Conor McGregor, and even still, they're very different fighters. So I think Wonderboy is going to completely outclass Michel Pereira. I think this is going to be a 30-27. Maybe Michel won't be incredibly wobbled in various situations, but I think Wonderboy is going to win this fight 30-27. I mean, Michel Pereira is solid. In his last fight, he coasted to a decision win over Santiago Ponzinibbio. Santiago got knocked out cold by Kevin Holland in Kevin's last fight. Wonderboy knocked out Kevin Holland. I know MMA math doesn't always work because of the unpredictability held by the sport, but in this case, I truly think it will. I think Michel Pereira's style plays right into Wonderboy. Michel is known for entertaining. If you guys remember the backflip he attempted and landed to get in guard against Nico Price, he's attempted the Showtime kick and Showtime punches, inspired by Anthony Showtime Pettis, of course. But Michel Pereira likes to entertain. He has a very awkward style, and that's probably the best style to fight against for Wonderboy, because Wonderboy relies on awkwardness and creativity. He is the best at that, and I don't think Michel Pereira is going to be able to beat Wonderboy at his own game. I mean, Michel Pereira doesn't really pose much of a threat for the finish, in my opinion. He hasn't gotten a finish in the UFC since 2020. It's been about 3 years now. All of his last 3 wins have come by decision, and I just don't see him. Obviously, I'm no genie. I am Mystic Nate, but I am no genie, and I can't give you a 100% outcome on this fight, but I can give you my pick, and I strongly feel that Wonderboy is going to be able to glide to a decision using his striking, kicking, and range against Michel Pereira. I think his creativity is going to implement itself into this fight and take over this fight as the fight takes a life of its own in the octagon. I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight. It's going to be a majority striking fight. These guys are going to remain on the feet for the majority of the fight, I do believe, and I think Wonderboy gets the job done 30-27 by decision over Michel Pereira. That being said, I am beyond excited for this fight because, as I said, I think it has fight of the night potential. Both of these guys are awkward. They're creative. They like to strike, and they like to do things differently. They like to throw strikes that not many other guys in mixed martial arts and the UFC in specific can really have the ability to throw and do in a real cage fight against another man trained to kill you. So I think both men's creativity are going to come together to create a possible fight of the night, but I think Wonderboy is just on another level when it comes to the striking. He'll be a step ahead the entirety of the fight, and he is going to beat Michel Pereira 30-27 by decision. That is my pick, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is the moment you have all been waiting for, the moment you have been anticipating, possibly in this podcast, and possibly the best fight on this card. I mean, you can really argue any fight is the best fight on this card with the main event, the co-main, the fights we just discussed. But this fight has huge, and I mean absolutely tremendous implications at light heavyweight, especially with the champion, or former champion, I should say, Jamal Hill, pulling out of his title fight with Yuri Prochazka due to injury. You have the number 3 ranked light heavyweight contender in Jan Blachowicz taking on the light heavyweight newcomer, former double champion in Glory Kickboxing and former middleweight champion of the world in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Alex Pereira. This fight it's absolutely incredible. And now, the way I see it playing out, well, first of all, it's going to be entertaining, no doubt. I think this card is just built to be entertaining with the matchups that exist on it. But I think Jan Blachowicz does have a path to victory here. Now, does that mean I'm picking him? No, but his path to victory is leg kicks and wrestling. We saw Jan Blachowicz implement his wrestling against Israel Adesanya, a guy who beat Alex Pereira in their last fight, who has a relatively similar style to Alex Pereira. They're different type of strikers, very different. Izzy is more technical. He's loose. He flows. He kickboxes. Alex is more of a powerful guy. He lands denser, harder shots that really rock you. But they are both strikers. They're both kickboxers. And Jan Blachowicz has a size advantage in this fight. Jan Blachowicz has a grappling advantage in this fight. Jan Blachowicz has legs that are made of steel. If you watch Jan Blachowicz's fight against Magomed Ankalaev, he was absolutely destroying Magomed Ankalayev's legs. He was ripping them to shreds for the entirety of the fight with a variety of different looks, from the leg kick, inside leg kick, outside leg kick. He was just doing everything. I mean, it was unbelievable. Jan Blachowicz, he's a very, very talented striker who has a clear grappling advantage in this fight. So, if he can shoot and land that takedown consistently throughout the fight, implement his leg kicks to slow Alex Pereira down on the feet, I think he can possibly get the job done. But with emphasis on it, I am taking Alex Pereira to win this fight by TKO. Alex Pereira's nickname, Poatan, it translates to hands of stone. He has a tattoo of stone on his hand to show that nickname and what it means, and he earned that nickname throughout his career. He was not just given it, he knocked countless opponents out, and he put them out bad, out cold, put them to sleep, separated them far, long beyond from being conscious, separating them from consciousness, as I like to say so often. Alex Pereira is a very, very talented kickboxer, and I think come this Saturday, his will to win is going to shine through upon the octagon in Salt Lake City, Utah. Alex Pereira, he's very good. He has that left hook that we all know and love. We know it so well. He's landed it in just about every single fight he has fought. Against Bruno Silva, he landed that left hook. He rocked Izzy with that left hook. He is talented. Now, we have to look at Jan Blachowicz's first and only title defense when he lost the title. Well, his second title defense, I apologize, after he beat Izzy, when he lost the title to close friend and training partner of Alex Pereira, Glover Teixeira. If you watch that fight, Glover Teixeira at one point chinned Jan Blachowicz with a beautifully placed and perfectly timed left hook that landed and wobbled Jan Blachowicz. He wobbled and was stunned. He retreated backwards upon that shot landing and touching his chin almost instantaneously. Now, if Alex Pereira is known for his left hook, if he possibly has the most powerful left hook in mixed martial arts pound for pound today, not even pound for pound, possibly just the most powerful left hook in the game, hands down. If his left hook lands the way Glover Teixeira's did, what do you think's going to happen? Jan Blachowicz is going to go to sleep. Glover Teixeira, being someone who beat Jan Blachowicz, is training with Alex Pereira every single day, giving him insight and valuable information on a path to victory and how he can defeat his upcoming opponent in Jan Blachowicz. I think that plays a huge role in this fight. Alex having someone so closely affiliated to him in his training camp that has fought and beat this guy before, knows the blueprint and what he needs to do to win this fight. Now, he's a very different fighter than Glover Teixeira, that's true. But that left hook is that left hook, and if it lands, I think Jan Blachowicz is going to sleep. Maybe not clean. It could be a finish like Alex had against Izzy, where he just landed it and Jan won't be able to recover like Izzy. But I think Alex is going to find a home for that left hand. I think he is a warrior. He truly, it's kill or be killed for Alex when he steps in that octagon. I know every UFC fighter follows that motto, but Alex Pereira embodies it. He was raised in Brazil, in the dumps of Brazil, with his indigenous tribe, where he learned how to fight. He grew his skills, honed his ability, and most importantly, honed his killer instinct. Alex Pereira, when he hurts you, he finishes you. There is no recovering. His ability to finish is unlike anybody's I might have ever seen, to be honest with you. And that is why I think Alex Pereira is going to win this fight. It's a 3-round fight, which I'd say bodes well for Jan, because the longer this fight stays standing, the better a chance Alex has. But yeah, I think if Jan cannot get this fight to the ground early and often, it just leaves 15 minutes for Alex to eventually catch Jan Blachowicz, which is too much time. You cannot give possibly the best striker in the world, not just in martial arts, but in the world, at this current moment, 15 minutes of opportunity to catch and land his significant shot on you, that left hook, which has already been landed on you by his training partner, former champion Glover Teixeira. Guys, I think Alex Pereira wins this fight. And oh boy, if Alex Pereira wins this fight, it is unbelievable the possibilities that the UFC has and can take from here. Jamal Hill just pulled out of his championship fight with Yuri Prochazka. Israel Adesanya has a fight coming up in Sydney at UFC 293. But after that, he is free and he is ready to go. He's fighting Sean Strickland. I don't think Sean's going to be able to get the job done. I think Izzy just has too many tools for Sean Strickland. Alex made light work of Sean, and I think Izzy's going to do the same. Maybe Sean will fight a little smarter than he did against Alex, but I just don't think he has the tools and a multifaceted enough game to beat Israel Adesanya. Izzy has just about every tool in the book on the feet, and Sean Strickland has a jab and a cross. He's a fighter, that's for sure. He's got the dog, but I just don't think it's enough of a dog to outbark Israel Adesanya, who quite literally came with a dog collar to the press conference against Alex Pereira. I think Izzy wins that fight, and then when Izzy wins that fight, if Alex wins this fight, like I think he will, that sets up a trilogy within the UFC between Alex and Izzy for double champ status at the 205-pound weight class in the light heavyweight division. Guys, that is unbelievable. The storyline that would hold, the press conference, the build-up, and the breakdown, the final moment, all that pressure boiling up and just exploding when one of the two knocks the other out, because we know when these two men fight in 25-minute fights, that fight is not going to a decision. They are in there to kill. Their striking styles just create for a war where one man will not escape alive. So, if Alex Pereira's will to win shines through like I think it will do, he could very well be set up for a vacant light heavyweight title shot against Israel Adesanya, which is probably the best thing for the UFC right now. That would sell more pay-per-views than any other fight I can think of right now, other than the possible return of Conor McGregor, which seems more unlikely by the day. But yeah, I'm just so excited for the implications this fight has at light heavyweight, and to see what will happen in the division and in the sport, in the organization after this fight happens. But my pick is Alex Pereira by TKO, probably round 2 or 3. I just think Jan does not, I don't think he has a great skill set to counteract the skill set held by his opponent in Alex Poatan Pereira. I think Alex he has the power advantage. He has the striking advantage. If he gets on the ground, that is a problem. But fights always start standing. Each round starts standing, and that gives Alex a chance, at least in each round, to knock out Jan Blachowicz, and I think that is going to be what he ends up doing. So I'm taking Alex Poatan Pereira, hands of stone, by TKO in this fight. That left hook is going to find a home, and when it lands, it's going to be lights out for Jan Blachowicz. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my prediction for the co-main event. Now we jump in to the main event in Salt Lake City of UFC 291. Justin versus Dustin, the rhyming names. Justin Gaethje, Justin, the highlight. Gaethje at that versus Dustin, the Diamond. Poirier hailing out of Lafayette, Louisiana. Guys, this fight is about as much of a toss-up or a pick-em fight as pick'em fights come. I mean, it's very hard for me to say who's going to win this fight. Both of these guys are very similar fighters to when they last fought. I mean, of course, they've both evolved, but their styles haven't changed all that much, which is why one might lean towards Dustin Poirier in this fight. But here's my breakdown. Here's how I think this fight's going to go. Justin, I believe, has more raw power. I think he packs more behind his punch. Dustin is very technical. He's strong and powerful, but he places his shots unlike any other and strings together beautiful boxing combinations. His technical ability on the feet to strike and to punch is very, very good. And we saw that when he knocked out Conor McGregor, who's arguably the most perfectly timing-wise fighter this UFC's ever seen. Conor McGregor he places his shots, he picks his shots, and he picks his opponents apart. Well, Dustin Poirier picked him apart and ended up putting him to sleep. Not McGregor fast, McGregor sleep. The greatest line Dustin Poirier has dropped in his career, but he said that, and it's true. Dustin Poirier knocked out Conor McGregor. He's a very good boxer, but Justin Gaethje, the man who has the advantage in the power department in this fight, has shown much more of an ability to remain within himself and stick to his game plan in his recent fights. Justin Gaethje's last win came over Rafael Fiziev, a young killer who's arguably the best striker in the division right now. Justin may have outstruck him, but Rafael's young. He needs more time to learn and absorb knowledge and stay within himself and his game plan. I think Rafael Fiziev is still a future champion, but for now, that's going to have to be put on pause because Justin Gaethje defeated him. I mean, Rafael Fiziev hit Justin Gaethje hard. He wobbled him bad at the beginning of that third round specifically, but Justin was able to stick behind his jab, eventually land that right hand, land some right uppercuts behind the jab, and do a lot of damage to Rafael Fiziev. He stayed within himself, he stuck to the game plan, and he ended up being awarded a 3-round decision win over Rafael Fiziev, I think Justin, if he stays within himself in this fight, which will be very, 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 emphasis on very one more time, hard for him to do in a 5-round fight against another man who's built perfectly to brawl against for you two to go to war. It's going to be hard. But I think if he stays within himself and remains within his game plan, sticks to what he does best, that jab and that right hand, and using his power to his advantage, staying defensively sound, keeping his hands up, I think Justin can very well beat Dustin in this fight. I don't think it will be by finish. I think this one is going to be a 5-round war that's going to go all 25 minutes. But I do give Justin the edge slightly in this fight. Now, Dustin Poirier obviously has an advantage on the ground. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's the only man to ever finish Max Holloway, where he submitted him by triangle choke a long time ago, early on in their careers. But I just don't think this fight's going to go to the ground. I mean, these two have unbreakable warrior spirits. These two are in there to brawl, and they want to fight, and they want to brawl, fight, and they want to kill bad. I mean, Justin Gaethje quite literally said on the microphone after his fight with Michael Chandler, this is the wrong era. We were born in the wrong era. If this was Rome years ago, we would be gladiators fighting to the death. That is the mentality and mindset of Justin Gaethje, and I don't think Dustin Poirier's mind is that far off. These two men want to kill each other. There is an animosity with both of these men each time they fight, and pitting them up against each other when they already have fought once and one of them knocked the other out, I think that just increases the stakes tenfold. I think this fight, it's possibly going to be the fight of the year. I mean, these two guys, their styles make for one of the most entertaining fights possible. Dustin Poirier's boxing is impeccable. His combinations are ridiculous. That's where he has the advantage on the feet. He strings together better combos. But I really think if Justin can consistently land that jab over and over and over and follow it up with those right hands and crack Dustin, make Dustin a little scared to enter the pocket, Justin Gaethje, if he can establish his presence and will early in the fight, I think he can keep that control and last for 25 minutes, defeating Dustin Poirier by decision. I don't think it will necessarily be dominant, but I do think that it will be a win for Justin Gaethje in the record books. I mean, regardless, I am very, 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 very excited for this fight, but I do give the advantage to Justin. Now, I would just like to talk about the similarities of these guys. I mean, I think they're both 36. I'm not sure the exact age. Let me actually, I bet you I could check right now. Both of these guys I'm sorry, I apologize. Both of these men are 34 years old. There is only a 1-inch difference in height, a 2-inch difference in reach. Dustin having that 2-inch reach advantage. These guys are very similar fighters. They both are coming off of wins, or not coming off of, but they both have wins over Michael Chandler. They were both choked out by Charles Oliveira. These guys have very similar career paths, and they're very similar fighters, and that's why I think this fight is going to be so ridiculously entertaining. But that being said, I am giving the edge to Justin Gaethje. Justin, the highlight, Gaethje in this fight. I'm taking Justin Gaethje by 5-round decision after 25 minutes of war fought. After two men leave a piece of their souls in the octagon, I think Justin Gaethje will collect those 2 pieces of souls and add them to his win list in his career and continue his surgence towards that lightweight title. Now, does a win over Dustin Poirier here earn him a title shot immediately thereafter? I absolutely think it does. I think Dustin Poirier is as big of a name as anybody in this lightweight division, even in the entirety of the sport. So if you beat a man like Dustin Poirier, I think that validates you to fight for the title, and I think that's what's going to happen. Justin Gaethje will win this fight. He will win this fight against Dustin Poirier. It's going to be a close fight. He's going to eke out a 5-round decision, and he's going to sit around and wait until he gets that title shot. Now, the lightweight division is very, very interesting right now, because when will that title shot come exactly? I am not so sure. Right now, we have Islam Makhachev scheduled to defend his belt in Abu Dhabi against Charles Oliveira for that rematch, once again with the belt at stake. I think that fight is going to go similar to the first time. Maybe it will be closer, maybe it will be by decision, but I think Islam Makhachev is going to beat Charles Oliveira once again. I don't see much of a change in either of their styles and game plans going into that fight, and I don't think Charles has the strength to grapple with Islam Makhachev. I think Islam, once he gets on top of Charles, it does not bode well for Charles. I think he will submit Charles Oliveira, but it will be closer than the first fight. I'm not necessarily sure how it will go exactly, but I just don't see Islam losing to Charles, especially after how their fight went when it was so recent. But Charles Oliveira, a week prior to being booked against Islam Makhachev for Abu Dhabi, said he will not be ready to fight in Abu Dhabi against Islam Makhachev. He said that himself, and then the UFC books the fight. Is Charles Oliveira having some doubtful thoughts creep into his head during this training camp? If he knows and publicly stated he's not going to be ready for this fight, did he really want to take this fight, or did the UFC just fatten that paycheck enough to where it was to the point of, okay, I cannot deny this? I do think Charles Oliveira pulls out of this fight. I think Islam needs a last-minute replacement in Abu Dhabi. Who is that going to be, though? Is Justin Gaethje really going to be ready to fight after a 5-round war against Dustin Poirier? Even if Dustin Poirier wins, will he be ready to fight after a 5-round war against Justin Gaethje? These guys are going to war. That is conclusive. I think that is a hands-down lock for this fight. I don't think either of them are necessarily going to be ready to fight in October in Abu Dhabi. So, who do I think is going to step in to save the day? I think Iron Michael Chandler is going to fight Islam Makhachev in Abu Dhabi for that title. Why? Mike, he wants a fight. He's coaching tough against Conor McGregor, but we all know that fight is slipping out of his grasps and through the cracks more and more day by day. I mean, Conor still has not entered the USADA testing pool. He's not going to do that anytime soon, I don't think. If he hasn't done it yet, why would he do it? Conor does not need to return. He's done everything he needs to do in the sport. He achieved double champ status. He's the richest fighter ever in the UFC's history, in mixed martial arts history. He was the richest athlete in the world not so long ago. I mean, it's just hard. Once you already have the silk sheets, it's hard to pull off the covers and get back to training and get back to grinding like Conor would have to. I'm not saying the fight's never going to happen. I just think it's unlikely in the near future, which is why Michael Chandler, who hasn't fought in a while, who's fresh and rested, but has been training, could very well be the answer if Charles pulls out to fight Islam in Abu Dhabi. Now, I think the winner of this fight, who I think will be Justin Gaethje, is going to face the winner of that fight, whether it's Islam versus Charles or Islam versus Mike, just strictly because I don't think the winner will be ready to fight so soon on such a quick turnaround after this fight. It's just too dangerous. You don't want to risk a guy's health, a concussion, a CTE. These are all serious things. And I think both of these guys are going to get enough CTE with the war they are going to have come this Saturday. So yeah, guys, I really think Charles might pull out. I think Mike Chandler is going to step in and take his place. And I think the winner of Justin and Dustin is going to get the title shot following that Abu Dhabi fight, regardless of who Islam faces. But, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited for this fight, for this war that is the main event. And I am so excited to see if Justin Gaethje can eke out a 5-round decision victory like I am predicting him to, because he is a formidable opponent across the cage, across the octagon from him, and Dustin Poirier, who is absolutely no joke. In fact, he's the opposite of the joke. He could be the most dangerous opponent that Justin is facing and has ever faced at lightweight. So I am taking Justin Gaethje by 5-round decision in this fight after 25 hard-fought minutes. That is my pick. Lock it in. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the fight preview. Thank you so much for tuning into the Chokehold Hour. Once again, as always, I am so excited and happy to be doing this. I love that I get to produce content for y'all about the sport I love. And it's crazy to me that you guys listen, regardless of the number of people that are listening. If it's 10, 20, 100, 150, 200, that is just crazy to me that there's anyone out there who will willingly listen to me talk about what I love. So that's awesome. Thank you guys so much. And that is the Chokehold Hour. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow all my socials on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. All of them are at the Chokehold Hour. I made it easy for you guys. One social media handle for all of my accounts, spanning across all social medias. So guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Shout out to my manager, Zach Steklow, who has been helping me out with some tweets and just plans for the future and helping me out on picks and such and how I'm going to go about doing fight recaps. And look out for him come August, because Zach Steklow is the betting specialist of this podcast, and he will be making appearances once we are together physically in person again at school. So thank you everybody for tuning into the Chokehold Hour. Don't forget to like and subscribe.